time now for two keynote speakers, and it's my pleasure to introduce the first one, who is Wouter Vanneuville, and I do apologize, Wouter, if I don't pronounce your name totally correctly. Wouter holds an MSc in geography at Ghent University, and he's an expert on climate change adaptation. He was a researcher and policy theme manager in integrated water policies for the Flanders government in Belgium. For the last 4 years, he's been working as an expert and project manager in climate change adaptation at the European Environmental Agency in Copenhagen. As an expert on flood risk management, and thanks to his experience with policies, as he says, he is trained in looking at the overall picture, something which is absolutely essential in these times, taking care and focusing both on social and environmental impacts of economic activities. Welcome, Wouter.
Hi, good morning, and thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me. I work indeed, well, I have worked in the past in the water group of the European Environment Agency. Then I left them and I came back indeed almost 5 years ago now to the Climate Change Adaptation Group. And the European Environment Agency is one of the decentralized agencies of the EU, with member countries that are, of course, the EU member states, but also Norway, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Turkey as a full member, plus our cooperation countries are the 6 West Balkans. I'm not going to talk about a specific project. I'm not going to talk about something that was part of the FASTER network. I want to highlight just a few things that are hopefully relevant for a wider audience, a wider group of countries, on how to progress on climate change adaptation, how to mainstream it into different sectors, including agriculture, which is impacted at one hand by climate change, but at the other hand has an impact as well. And I think I cannot agree more with what is said before. There's no discussion about the need for a net zero, and let's hope in Glasgow that we really reach a new level of ambition there, and not just a new level of ambition, but also start implementing it. But notwithstanding that need for a net zero, adaptation is already a necessity today. So it's not either or, and it's not that we gave up on the mitigation part if we start adapting. No, it's both of them at the same time. And in 2014, the European Commission, together with the European Environment Agency, decided to have a kind of a platform called Climate Adapt to collect information for a wide variety of users. In the beginning, they called it's a one-stop shop, but that doesn't exist. I mean, there's a lot of information available at local level. There's a lot of information available at national level, but at the international level, for those who want to look what other countries are doing and look for ideas and see what they can apply in their context and so on, we try to be a first-stop shop for climate change adaptation, impacts, vulnerability, and also expanding it, and that is due to the new EU adaptation strategy, also expanding it with specific tools, or let's say platforms. For example, the European Climate Data Explorer. Copernicus, one of the highlights of the work program of the EU, creates a lot of data, a lot of satellite data, a lot of round-true data for free, satellite images, of course, on a global scale, but you need to be a kind of specific type of person diving into how to deal with these data, coding and so on. What we try to do is create indicators out of that together with the Copernicus Climate Change Service in the Climate Data Explorer. Something similar, and of course, well, it was already decided before COVID came. Now it looks as if we were just jumping on a train that unfortunately left the station somewhere end of 2019, but it was already decided before to create a separate sub-platform, let's say, on climate change and health with the Health Observatory. And the idea is to create a mutual learning community that is providing a lot of information on sectors, on different policies, including agriculture, forestry, marine, fisheries, these kind of things, but also research projects, and a tool I will tell a little bit more in a moment, like the adaptation support tool. We are not a repository for project data or for project results and so on. That is something, yeah, well, it's a decision in the beginning that we are not that kind of platform, but we're trying to link to as much as possible relevant information for a broad audience. Going to the next, this is the adaptation support tool. It's well, the circle, of course, never ends at the end of stage 6, but it guides authorities at national level, but that can also be at subnational level, for example, at urban level, or at sectoral level, because we're providing more information for specific sectors as well. It guides them through the adaptation policy cycle and tries to give examples of what other have been doing, some indicators, results of research projects that are targeted to that. And it all starts with preparation, preparing the ground for adaptation. Then, of course, a risk and vulnerability assessment, which is quite important also to see how broad you can go, identifying a lot of adaptation options, assessing these options. And let's say in the past, a lot of strategies and plans were focusing on step 1 to 4 mainly. There is a shift. There's really a shift recently, something you can also see in policy documents like the new EU adaptation strategy, towards the whole cycle. And that includes, of course, we have to do things, we have to implement them and become more resilient, even if that remains a very, very difficult thing to really measure, in particular quantitatively. And then, of course, there's yeah, what is called the monitoring and evaluation step. In fact, it's an evaluation step, because you can only make a proper evaluation if you started monitoring your things throughout the whole cycle. So if you decide at the end, and that is what many are doing now, especially several of the front runners who were always seen as countries that were doing it very well, they now realize that they didn't really monitor a lot in a structured way, so that when they do the circle again and go to the policy cycle again, that they should focus much more on yeah, trying to have a monitoring system in place for their goals, for their targets. So it's not because you're a front runner that you're doing everything in the best possible way. And we see now, for example, at the northern side of the Mediterranean, a country as Greece that was often saying about themselves from, yeah, we're a little bit behind, that they are now focusing much more on the lessons learned that Austria or Germany or France or some of the other countries that in the past were said those are front runners when it comes to adaptation policies. The lessons they learned are now extremely valuable for a country like Greece, who is having a monitoring framework in place from the beginning of what they are doing. So it's a step-by-step guidance. These are just the 6 main steps. Each of them is divided in 4 to 7 sub-steps where you can find different links, resources. We also try to focus a bit on indicators, although it is pretty difficult to give things that are really quantitative, but you can have proxies. And we also try to update that permanently, making links to other issues. There is a lot that countries all over the world, and it doesn't matter to which of the blocks you belong, but all over the world, we agreed to report, for example, under the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation are 2 different things, but there's a huge overlap. So indicators and information that you already collect in a country to report to Sendai, and hopefully not just for that international reporting, but also because you feel it's relevant for yourself to learn something about it. Well, some of them can be used as a proxy, can be put in context, etc., etc. As I said, the original one was mainly focusing on what is happening at national level, at sectoral level, but there is a specific version for urban adaptation as well. And when I said from monitoring and evaluation, it's maybe the most difficult one, because evaluation is the last step, but monitoring happens throughout the whole system. It's also the one where the guidance was maybe less than for the other steps in the past. So that's the one we are focusing on now as well. It's good to have a lot of information available and to say it's all in a system and you can find it, but that's not how it works. If you want people to find information, different audiences really need a lot of different products. And there was a moment that we created story maps for climate change impacts. And then you can say, if you really look at the details of what is in there, is there something really new you did in it? And the answer is no. It's all information that was available in reports, in detailed indicators, in data sets and so on, but that didn't reach politicians, parliamentarians and so on. And the original story map was a focus on agriculture, on of course, the hazards that are very relevant for them, including drought, which is a major one also in the projections. And then not just looking at the physical aspects, but also how that impacts estimated incomes for farmers, for example. That was just put in a kind of a story map, the information that was already available, and then picked up by media, much more than 500-page, well, 500 is an exaggeration, but 100-page reports and so on would ever have done. So is it new? No, it's not totally new, but we're also not a research institution. We have to bring available knowledge together and make it available for different audiences. And that is exactly what we did with story maps. On agriculture, yeah, of course, there's a lot of things ongoing in that sector. The Common Agriculture Policy is also one of the biggest policy packages in the EU, but we were also looking in the recent past at the global climate change impacts and the supply of commodities, what that means for Europe. So in that sense, there's really a focus outside of the 32 member countries we have for the moment in the agency. And in the future, one of the things we foresee is, of course, climate change and the bioeconomy, with a lot of difficulties, what to do with biofuels and so on. So it's certainly not an easy one to create, but something that needs to be done. This is the last slide. When it comes to needs, I think if you look at adaptation policies in many countries, in many regions, also at local level, almost in all of these strategies and plans in the CCIV assessment, agriculture is really prominently there. Big question is climate change adaptation also reflected in the sectoral plans for the agriculture sector? And that is something we're not sure about at all. Adaptation is about mainstreaming, so it's about making these connections. It's not about blaming anybody, but it's certainly something to focus on. And then looking at what the agency can do and what the agency does, because we have, of course, our member incorporating countries, but there's also the regional relationships in the neighborhood area, and the shared environmental information system principles that were also in southern, well, in the southern Mediterranean, the red countries. If you look at the bigger map, we also did something similar in the east. For the moment, that's again under negotiation. It's not us to decide. It's the European Commission who decides to work with us on this. But there are most probably opportunities for the future to work outside of what is our core group of countries that are the members of the agency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wouter, and extremely interesting presentation. So thank you for that.